Welcome to Alberta's Regiment, stories from the South Alberta Light Horse. I'm Captain Don Gerling, the Canadian Army Reserve CIC, and with me today I have retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert McKenzie, and we're here to interview Chief Andy McGrogan. Andy, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
So, what we'd like to do to start with is give us how did you get to Medicine Hat and how did you get into policing? Give us a little bit of the Andy McGrogan story.
Well, I'm almost embarrassed when I'm asked that because I actually came out to Alberta from Ontario in 1979 to visit my brother for 2 weeks, and I basically haven't been back. So I met a girl here in Medicine Hat while I was out visiting my brother and working with him. I'd been waiting to, I'd applied with the Ontario Provincial Police, been waiting to get on there, and an ad came up in the Medicine Hat News. And I applied and got on, and you know, I always had the intention of getting some experience and moving back to Ontario, to my hometown. And you know how it goes. I met a lady later on, my wife Sherry, and had 2 kids, Ryan and Kale. And you know, fell in love with the community and the people here and the police service, and I couldn't think of being anywhere else.
So in your career, obviously you did patrol work and
yeah, so through my career, like most of us, we started out, and you know, I'd like to say that I joined in 1980, so that's kind of pre-constitutional, and when I joined there were 71 members, and we now have 114, so we've really grown by 45 members since 1980 when I joined. And when I joined, I think when I look back at the folks that I worked with, I think about 1975 was really the beginning of the professionalization of policing, and it seemed that it was about that time that we started to recruit people that had some education and some, you know, community connection, obviously. And so it's been quite a journey from 1980 until now, and of course working all the gamut. Patrol, back in those days, you worked a little stint in communications, the 911 center. There was no 911 then, but we answered the phones. And then I went to canine. I totally loved canine. I was in there for 6 years. I always joke the world famous Tracer. I had an awesome police dog. We had fun for 6 years, great time. And when I'm nearing the end of my life, I know that it'll be one of my greatest memories was the time I worked the street with my police dog. And then, you know, like a lot of us do at the Medicine Hat Police Service, we work in the tactical team. And so I spent 13 or 14 years with the tactical team, kind of leaving the team as the commander. And again, some just great experiences, right? High risk activities. Enjoyed that. You know, in criminal investigations, I love my time in major crime. I work with some real characters in there. One memory is my old friend Mick Nyman, who's now passed, but tremendous human being, fun to work with, a great mentor for me, one of the number of great mentors I had. So there was just a great, it's been fun. Like I always tell our people, you know, I've been there for basically 35 years this month. I've got a couple of years to go, and actually, I always tell our folks, like, you know, just have fun. If you don't have fun, if this isn't not more than a job, then go find something else, because we see so much human tragedy that that you've got to have fun with it and enjoy the good things, enjoy the camaraderie of the people, enjoy the community, and engage in it. And it's been such a great journey. I was kind of doing the math the other day, and the police service started in 1899. And when I retire in 2018, I will have been a member of the service for a third of the life of the police service. So I think I just didn't know when to hang it up maybe, but I've totally loved every minute of it. So it's really been a great time, a great experience, and a great community to raise my kids.
so you know in that view, do you have a particular moment with your dog that there would be an interesting story that would be worthy of give you an idea of what dog's abilities were? And
well, I have a number of them, obviously. You know, I don't think any dog since has had as many catches as the world famous Tracer. But I know there's a few handlers that'll disagree with that. There's a couple. You know, I remember a nice long track that I did. We had a break and enter, and a guy took off from a vehicle, you know, running through the country, and ended up, you know, running to his residence in the city. And it was like a 2 or 3 hour track through creeks, you know, up over coulee hills, and you know, for the dog to actually track that far and find a bad guy at the end was pretty exciting. We had a hostage incident in the flats in the 80s where I showed up at the scene with my dog. It was a prolonged incident. As a matter of fact, I was shot at. I actually heard the bullet whizzing by my head before I actually knew what was going on, because the guy took the shot from inside of the house, but I heard the bullet whiz by me. And anyway, on that particular occasion, we ended up breaching the house, and I sent the dog in. And I hadn't worked with the tactical team much at the time, because I was just a brand new dog handler. So I sent him in to search the place out, and Tracer never missed a guy. Like, he just never did. He'd always indicate if he had a bad guy. And he was prancing strangely on the second floor, but I wasn't getting an indication, so I pulled him out, and I said, I don't think we have anything. So I stood back while the tactical team went in, and they threw in flashbangs. Well, I didn't know what they were, and I thought now we had a gun battle, and it was my fault because my dog missed the guy. And of course, so I panicked, and it was like I thought maybe I'd put our people in danger. It happened that the guy had shot himself, and my dog didn't indicate a cadaver like he would a human being, and I'd never thought of that before. And it was just, it was just a different experience. So just, I guess I think of the memories and the learning experiences. That was high risk, a highly dangerous situation, but at the end of the day, I learned a ton from it, and so those experiences, yeah, they're good fun.
Well, that's an interesting one, because I was one of the incident commanders on that crew. I seem to remember that we had a mattress that started on fire in that incident.
Right. That's right. That house started on fire. And,
yeah.
I think what really precipitated the entry was there was a playoff game on hockey on television that night. I think everybody had enough, but there were a lot of very unique things tried. I remember we exchanged a kid for a bottle of booze or something, which nowadays wouldn't happen. But you know what? Some of it worked, and it was a very interesting call. As been a number of other ones that I'd been on after that. Just great experiences. And when you think about working for a living, punching a clock versus going out there and working in the community and, serving the community, it's such a higher calling, and it's just like I keep saying, it's a privilege. And it's been so fun, and I never regret it. I left the oil patch. I was making double the money in the oil patch when I left, and but I have zero regrets to end up staying here. So it's been really good.
Excellent.
Okay, Andy, throughout the years, the Medicinet Police Service has been involved with the South Alberta Light Horse in a number of ways. They've used our facility here for training. In fact, a few years ago, they ran a whole recruit course out here. And do you have any comment on that?
Well, yeah, we've absolutely had an awesome relationship with South Alberta Light Horse since I can remember. As a matter of fact, we've had a number of leaders from the Medicinet Police Service that have been leaders here. So there's been a relationship the whole time. So the facility piece has been fantastic, and also, the use of some equipment at some emergent situations over the years. But back to the people, which is always the most important thing. I think of our retired Sergeant Lindsay Fraser, and was
Police Chief,
our police chief Don Kylo was a member. That's correct. Retired Staff Sergeant Don Gerling, and there's a number of folks. And actually, we have a gentleman hired right now as a highly contributing member of our police service, who's a retired veteran and now a member of the regiment.
That's Sergeant Major Scott Shaw.
It is, yes. So, any time that we have situations or equipment that we need, we phone and ask, and we almost are always told yes. And it's, we're kind of municipally funded, so at times there's certain pieces of equipment we don't have access to. So the regiment has been fantastic in helping us however they can within, of course, the rules and guidelines that they have. But it's been a super relationship, and we think back to the floods, and in 95, the regiment was out and helped with doing point containment for making sure that making sure people's houses were safe. We didn't have the capacity to do that, so that's not their mandate. But you know what? When things happen, it's the regiment, and it's the service, and it's people, in groups like that get together and look after the common interest, and then, worry about all the details later. So it's been a tremendous relationship. And of course, I've been fortunate enough to be part of, because of my position, invited to a lot of ceremony with the South Alberta Light Horse, and have quite enjoyed it. So it's been fantastic.
I know what Sir Robert Peel's probably famous comment, people are the police and the police are the people. There's obviously a relationship, cross-purpose relationship. But do you see that in a particularly significant way between the regiment and the police service in the community?
Well, yeah, I think we're here to serve the community. That's our role. As a police service, we're here to serve the community. South Alberta Light Horse has a somewhat different role, a bigger role actually in some regard as far as serving the community at, in times of conflict. But absolutely, I mean, there's people are unique in the way that it's service first and community first, and secondarily then it's about themselves. And that's, as I think I've alluded to earlier in the interview, that's what's kept me in this job as long as I have, is to watch the amazing people of this community come together when they need to and work together to serve the community. And I know there's always misunderstanding and controversy around that, because when we deal with people's safety, sometimes it means that we have to involve ourselves in what some would consider a negative way in order to keep peace. So there's controversy sometimes, but if we always keep in mind what our ultimate goal is, and that is to keep I always say the 95% good folks really safe from harm against that small group of people that don't respect their neighbors like most of us do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's always that link. It's a call to service.
I know personally that there's a number of members of our service, past and present, who are members of the military, not necessarily some of them from the Risk Regiment, but from other regiments in their background that have become members of the service. Do you believe, I'm curious if you think that the skill sets that they have attained was part of the reason why they were successful in being a candidate for the police service?
Absolutely. I mean, whenever we see someone, we actually just hired a young fellow that came from the Navy. He just started with us on October the 1st, and people with military background, and this is a overall general observation over the last 35 years, if I may, I'm going to go back to a purpose greater than themselves. There's times when people that come from a military, paramilitary environment understand that it's not about them first, that it's about service first. And that's what I pick up from people from the military, and they understand that, for the most part in our modern policing, we don't want to run a military organization. We need input in times of peace, but when things are happening, we need to be able to just get to it and ask questions later. And that's what I find the military are so good at adopting. And great leadership skills we find all across the board, and we bring in fellas that have got some military training and experience, is they've already got a strong sense of what leadership is about, both in how they lead themselves and how they lead others. So anytime I see military folks, even at the officer level, I'm amazed at how effective their leadership training is and what quality people they are. Great people.
I've often said that the people in the military tend to undersell their skills and ability, and they say, for example, Sergeant Major Shaw was a tank commander and tank gunner, and yet there's not much demand for that on civilian street. But he has a lot of other skills that are developed through the military that are applicable no matter what job you go in.
Well, and obviously, him joining our police service in the role that he did as exhibit control, definitely not the same as, running a tank around Afghanistan, but his there's the big thing, organizational skills. I notice a lot of folks, retired Sergeant Bill McDonald, who's now our training, firearms training officer, all these guys seem to one common denominator, is that they can take care of themselves and they're organized, and so they're ready, they're prepared, if I want to say. So their preparedness makes them, I think, exceptional in circumstances when we need them to be. And that's probably an observation for almost all of our military guys that I can think about. They've been trained to prepare and be ready, whether it's a small task or a big one. And they understand that the small tasks and the preparation is what gets them to the big tasks in a way that they can actually execute. And so that's, yeah, definitely, you know, if you put it in that frame that you did, Scott doesn't run the tank around, even though there's a rumor we have one. His skill sets are still totally applicable.
Well, speaking about your tactical vehicle, the first time I saw it was out here at the Armories. The city was up here, and they were doing an introduction to the people who maintain it. Yeah. And it was up here, which is quite an addition for the police force, and quite a cost-effective addition, the way it was achieved.
Yeah, well, as you know, there was a lot of community controversy about that. I simply looked at it as a safety tool. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, I don't want to militarize our policing environment. That's the last thing I want. But when the ladies and gentlemen of the Medicine Hat Police Service go out to a high-risk situation, and I haven't done all I can to give them the equipment they need to be safe, then shame on me. We've had some detractors from down the road who, police service, that were negative, and last week they actually called and asked if we'd bring it down because they had a high-risk situation. So, you know, you have to consider the safety of our people. If we're asking them to go out there and put themselves in harm's way, and then we don't give them the stuff that they need to do that, no different than what you do in the military, then we're going to lose their confidence. And when we lose their confidence, then we lose the community confidence. So it's a ripple effect. So if I could have 63,000 conversations, I'd want to tell people that we in no way want to do anything other than serve this community. And sometimes we have to serve them in times that are dangerous. And they're not, and our people don't shirk those responsibilities. Really quickly, in September, we had an incident just before we got the vehicle, after it was approved and while we were waiting for it to get here, where we had a suicidal male on the highway with a shotgun. Mm-hmm. And he was walking back towards town with a loaded shotgun, and our members were following him at like 12 feet, mm-hmm. you know, with a ballistic blanket that maybe would have stopped a shot. And they were putting themselves at harm's way, and they were coming up with the difficult decision of, do we let this guy back into the city of Medicine Hat with this loaded shotgun in his state? Tragically, he shot himself right in front of our members, you know. Mm-hmm. So it was a tragic event that if we had that armored rescue vehicle there, we might have been able to get a little closer to him. We might have been able to use some non-lethal tactics in order to bring that situation to a safe conclusion. We just couldn't. All we could do was follow him at a not very safe distance and hope for the best. And we shouldn't be hoping for the best.
No. Well, hopefully you'll never be in a situation where you really need it, but if you ever are, you have it now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a 20-year shelf life. It's a piece of safety equipment. It's meant to keep the community safe and our people safe. And that's all it's for.
Yeah, it is a fantastic piece of equipment, and if people could actually get down and take a look at it, I crawled around inside and I was really impressed. And if you're in one of those situations where you could be shot out of that, you'd feel a heck of a lot safer in that than, like you said, holding a ballistic blanket.
Well, absolutely. And if, you know, we don't have to go to California or somewhere to see the effectiveness. And if you query Saskatoon Police Service saved a family who were basically hunkered down behind a vehicle. Saskatoon, we're not talking, you know, California or here. Hunkered down behind a vehicle taking rifle fire, and the rescue vehicle pulled up, created cover, and they rescued that family. Mm-hmm. So there's a perfectly applicable situation where that vehicle, in my mind, saved those people's lives. So yeah, you know, but that's the balance, right? It's the controversy of, do the police need that? Are they militarizing? And the value of it was really insignificant.
And that's what the administration has to make, is the decision on that. What is necessary, what you need.
Yes, yeah.
And
yeah, like I said, we have to have the confidence from our folks that we're looking after their needs while they're out there serving us. No different than if our people are in legal jeopardy. You know, are they being looked after if they're in legal jeopardy? And you know, that's, you know, so I always say our obligation is to keep our people safe psychologically, physically, and legally. And we should be looking at all three of those things all the time to make sure they can go out and do the things that we ask them to do, and our community and our citizens ask them to do on a daily basis, 24/7.
On a general type of question, you mentioned that policing has been changing since you joined. How has it changed?
Well, you know, I joined in '80, and in 1982, this thing called the Constitution came into play. And I remember Darwin Greaves was a prosecutor then, and he came into our briefing, and he looked at us and said, "Guys, you don't get it. You think that this is just one sentence you have to read to people now." He said, "It's going to be way more than that." And, you know, of course, we're like, yeah, whatever. You know, no, it won't. It has changed the landscape on how we police. It's one of the things. There's many things that have. Technology has probably been one of the biggest drivers of change. I literally now could not go out in a police car by myself without a couple weeks of training on our computer systems, because I haven't been out in the car since we've gotten these MDTs and what have you not. So quite embarrassingly, I couldn't go out and effectively work a shift with the technology. No, it's not my job, but it's a strange feeling, you know, that, and pretty soon we're going to be going to electronic tickets, and you know, I can still write the odd ticket, but you know, when that changes again, so the technology, the law has changed incredibly. The professionalization of policing, I think, is really upped its game. I told you, in my view, it started in about '75. And it's continued to increase in the professionalism of our people. We just put a recruit class through where we partner with the secondary, post-secondary education, being Lethbridge College, and we basically give them academic accreditation for their training, which has never been done before. But it's the way things are going. You know, we have to train. Our training is a big deal. You can't go through your career as a police officer now without continual and ongoing training, and it's got to be relevant training, and you know, so it's changed incredibly. But you know what hasn't changed? People haven't changed. I go out on the odd ride along with our folks, and it's the same thing. And if you can deal with people in an effective way, demonstrate compassion and empathy when you need to, communicate clearly, the job's kind of fundamentally the same. It's all the stuff around it. The paper and the legal priorities now have changed. So in that way, it's changed quite a bit, but the basic premise hasn't changed much, and happy about that. Drugs, of course, illegal drug activity, it has, of course, changed. I think the pot of today is not the same thing it was in the 70s and 80s. We have fentanyl in our community now, which is just very recent. Methamphetamine, which is something that this community had really not had a problem with, while other communities have over the last decade. And now it's becoming an issue in our community. So these issues they affect the safety of our community because a lot of people that are addicted to meth and fentanyl are out doing a lot of property crimes to steal for their, so that we're finding a new rash of thefts from vehicles, and of course it always escalates to violent situations. And I think Calgary is living that right now. They're having a heck of a time in Calgary. And speaking with the chief, the new chief this week, it mostly has to do with their drug problems that every community seems to be faced with now.
They get in Calgary, the gangs that control the drugs.
That's right.
And distribution networks and.
Absolutely, and I always say we arrest a drug dealer, and usually the guy that replaces him is just a little more violent and a little more sophisticated than the last guy we arrested. And so it's a very complicated game out there. Our investigators still do a great job, and but it's a changing landscape, and they've got to stay up with it. The techniques change, and of course, technology as far as cell phones. I mean, we used to do wiretap investigations. You can pretty much forget that now because of cell phones and the difficulty with accessing numbers and all the things, and even the views of Canadians in relation to privacy and lawful access. I think it's changed a little bit, and I think we're just going to have to see how this all unfolds. I think until the country sees it as a safety issue, we're going to have the same limitations we have now. But sooner or later, we're going to have to be alive to the criminals who are out there working through technology, and police have to have a method of stopping that criminal activity. There's a lot of criminal activity through frauds, through computer, drug transactions, all kinds of things, pornography. So we're talking real safety issues here. So, again, it's just changing and evolving, and we've seen it through our career, and Don, you as well, that it's like a pendulum, and it's just, we go so far one way, and then all of a sudden it'll start to come back. And I've had the privilege of, since 1980, watching that pendulum swing around, and good times and there's bad times. But
how is the cooperation for police forces across Canada? Are you involved in the Canadian Police Chiefs Federation in that?
Yes, actually, I am. So there's the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. I've been the Alberta director for the last 5 years. I'm on my 6th year right now. The Alberta Association of Chiefs of Police, which is more provincial and local, we just met in the last week. That's where I was last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in Camrose, and all the chiefs were there discussing, of course, all the issues that are topical and local. And we have it's probably the best relationship that I've experienced since, being the chief in 2008 until now. It's very collegial. We all kind of agree with the issues that are before us, and I think we're working really well with the Solicitor General. We've got a great relationship. And I think even our relationship with our associations is definitely more, it's better than it's ever been, in my view. So it's a good relationship time right now, and there's so many things just in Alberta. To be quite honest, I think I enjoy the relationship with the Alberta Association of Chiefs of Police more, probably because we all have the same issues that we're facing, and we get together and talk about the legal changes in our environment and all the initiatives that we're doing, and we actually collaborate together on so many things around technology, around intelligence, and crime. And so yes, there's a great, even though we all have our independent municipalities, or you're the RCMP, it's very collegial, and we're all working towards the same goal.
Is there a move to getting more cooperation in terms of technology and the ability to use technology at the local level and the provincial level? Is cooperation getting greater? Is there a commonality?
Well, yes, there's totally, technology, like I've said, is a huge deal, and it's a very expensive issue. We have our own IT unit, and I call it the big black hole, because you could spend money on technology forever, but it's spending smart money on technology, and it's doing some of the little things. So some of the things we're working on, we're talking about, and of course we're talking about body-worn cameras, and everybody has their opinions about that, but at the bottom line is it's a very big project, because you think of, if I've got my body-worn camera on and I go into your house to take a theft of garden hose complaint, and I'm filming the inside of your house while I'm doing it, and how's that for you? So there's just so many privacy issues. There's disclosure issues. Where do we store all of this data we're gathering, and the expense? So as a province, we're saying, how can we maybe do this together? Of course, we've got the cloud now. We can store, instead of buying servers, we can rent space in the cloud, and then all the issues that come around that. Another big issue that we face is privacy law. Privacy law has really, it's probably our lawyer said that, in some ways it's more significant than the Charter on how it affects policing, and it really does. So retired chief of Calgary, Rick Hansen, made a point once. He says, it seems that privacy trumps safety, and there's no kind of balancing of, we do need to ensure people's privacy, and I totally believe and understand that as just a citizen in this community, but safety should be considered in all of these decisions to keep things private, right? And I think of the healthcare system, and we have a bit of a gap there trying to communicate. And the police, what do we want? We want relevant information that create safety in our community. That's it. I don't want to know about your bladder issues, but I might want to know about safety issues that relate to your health. Exactly, exactly. So, you know, having access to relevant information that brings safety to this community is what I think police want on behalf of the citizens all across Canada. Don said it properly. Like we only police at the will of the community. We are not a state above. We police as members of this. We are members of this community, and I think sometimes people maybe lose sight of that, and sometimes it's our fault as a policing nation, and sometimes it's perception. And you know what happens south of the border, for instance, and what happens north of the border. We have a different policing environment here, and I'm so thankful that we have such great support in this community for policing. And it's not that way even across Canada. But Alberta, I think, are very supportive of their police, and I think we work hard at, I hope we work hard at communicating with people that we are the community, and we're policing on their behalf and at their pleasure.
Okay, one of the things that I've always thought is that as a police chief of a medium-sized community, you have a police force, and there are a lot of advantages to being in a member of the police force, police service in a mid-sized community as opposed to a larger community. And just reading through your bio, the number of different departments you've been in your policing career, I think makes your job now a lot easier because you've done it.
Yeah, well, you know, I sat down with the new chief from Calgary, Roger Chaffin, and you know, if you look at his bio, he's done it, and he's done it in a bigger center. You know, the great thing about our community is it's in some ways not as complicated as big communities. I always, you know, joke around, so, you know, I'm Andy and I'm from Mayberry, and everything's beautiful here. And for the most part, it is. This is a great, very law-abiding, fantastic community. And we're, you know, fortunate to police here when you think of, and to live here, when you think of some of the complications of some of the bigger centers. But, you know, yeah, you know, and the big thing is the relationships that you get to build over the years. You know people. Like you know people, like you do, Don. It's not, so you know the people of the community that you serve, so it's a different environment that we definitely live in. And yes, some great experiences. And to be able to be in relationship with some of those chiefs from the bigger centers, Calgary, Edmonton, RCMP, and have the conversations about the current issues and about leadership. And we had our first officer involved shooting in about a generation here a couple of years ago, and I phoned now retired Rick Hansen at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you know, getting advice from him, you know, about, you know, how should I deal with this with the media? Here's some things I'm thinking. What do you think? And so we had that, you know, 10-minute conversation that really helped me frame things. So it's that collegial kind of nature that we have, I think, across the province, and everybody willing to help each other out whenever we can. That's so valuable. You can't beat it. Yeah. I'd have no desire to be the chief of Calgary. I love it right here.
Well, just the commute to work would be very frustrating.
2 kilometers down the hill, I'm at work every day, and very fortunate. Yeah, it's very good.
So, I mean, that runs on the heels of our last flood, how quickly you were able to get the military on board here and in our community, and what they did, both with this regiment and the resources that came to the regiment from other military, from Edmonton, from the Strathconas.
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody that was around and saw the barriers that were put up by the regiment and the work that was done on, you know, even point control, and it was fantastic. I know they didn't want to be in a position where they were governing citizens, you know, but they came and did the hard work of getting everything set up and in place. And yeah, it was again, I was away for most of it. I've missed a couple floods, and like I said, I come back and took all the credit for the success, but again, that great relationship, you know, and being able to call people that you know and are in relationship. And the Deputy Chief Weigel actually led, you know, from a policing perspective, led the initial work on getting that set up, the logistical piece and the safety piece, and working with the regiment here. So yeah, it was a great success, and that, again, it's so nice to be able to pick up the phone and be able to talk to people that you're in a relationship with and that you've got trust with. And what a start to getting things done. And I think in bigger centers, sometimes that relationship is exactly what creates barriers when they don't have it. Yeah. So yeah, we're very fortunate in this very unique community that we live in.
So you've just nicely got into your new digs, the new building.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about how that's working out, and I don't know that all the public really know all of the changes, and there were some significant changes as a result of the building.
We were lucky enough to do a renovation, and we looked at, of course, a number of options, 2 sites, abandoning our building, building a new one, et cetera, and it came really clear that, our building was a great building, it was just too small. Kind of like I think City Hall now might be a beautiful building, but might not, fit the needs. So, what we said is, let's build a rectangle and kind of attach it to our building, and we'll run all of our operations out of it in a very logical way. We, of course, had our parking garage, and on the second floor was all of our operational folks, patrols, all our uniform folks, traffic, community safety unit, bylaw enforcement, and then the second floor is all of our plainclothes units. So we have major crime, priority street crime, organized crime, and intel. And actually our IT section works. So in that new part of the building, it's very operational, and a third of the main floor is cell block. We have 23 cells in our cell block, and we didn't want to get back in the cell block business, but we only had 6 cells over at the remand center that we were partnering with, and we couldn't fit our prisoners in there. So we reluctantly got back in the cell block business, which is a whole unique experience. But by expanding, our people now have investigative rooms where they can actually, put out their case files. They have proper desk space. We actually built a 3rd floor, which was very controversial, for future growth. I mean, the city never does that, but the council at the time said, you know what, for $4 million of, the original expansion was 17 million. And for 4 million more, we can just put this vacant 3rd floor up on the top that really, and that building's good until, Don and I are playing shuffleboard at the Viner Center, and probably a little longer. So it's a facility that's available for the future generation. It's not about what we need now, other than the piece that we got. But that building is big enough for our needs till long after I'm gone. So I'm very thankful that the city had the foresight to actually allow that to happen, but it's created some controversy.
Well, I think it's a fantastic tribute to the planning that went on both at the police side and the city side to plan ahead. They don't seem to do that in the community. They build for now, and 2 years down the road, it doesn't suit.
Well, that's the perception for sure.
Yeah.
But I can tell you in this case, the city council of the time had to make that tough call. It was their call, and they made it, and I applaud them for it. It's not easy, because it's public money. And I will say that I know that it's only one taxpayer, and that's all of us. It's not municipal and federal and provincial. We're all taxpayers. All the money that was used to do that renovation was grant money from the province. So we didn't incur any debt by putting that building up. So that's, I think, a great plus for the community as well, is that we have no debt servicing on that building, and it's good to go for the next 50 years.
So what big projects do you have moving forward?
Well, technology is the big thing. So we're looking looking into the lens of body-worn cameras. That will change how we do business significantly, like I've mentioned earlier. That's a big one. As far as growth right now, we haven't really grown. As I said, we have 114 members. We haven't grown since I've been the chief. We haven't had any more members, nor do I think we need them. We are sufficiently staffed to do our work at this particular time. It's just always finding ways to face the new threats. And we're talking about methamphetamine right now. So another challenge that we have right now is funding from provincial sources. So basically right now we have the ALERT, Alberta Law Enforcement Response Teams, which were stood up in about '08. And we have about 4 or 5 members funded through that ALERT model. And that is a greatly efficient way for us to police this region. So basically we have 2 organized crime units for the most part that basically work together to deal with organized crime issues in the whole southeastern Alberta region, including Brooks. And that link is valuable because a lot of the drugs that were coming into Medicine Hat were coming through Brooks and Calgary. So if we lose funding for ALERT, that will change the game. And so we're working hard to deal with our new government, to speak about the importance of and the safety that it brings to the community by having that ALERT system in place. It allows us to work with our RCMP partners a lot closer because of policy issues. Our policy issues are quite different. The RCMP are a big machine. There's a lot of moving parts, and we're smaller and more nimble. So it's kind of like the Titanic versus the tugboat. And a lot of times we can get things done quicker. So it works good for them too to kind of, you know what I mean, by having that relationship. So there's a great relationship there. So we don't want to lose that. But as far as moving into the near future, I see technology as the biggest issue, the most expensive issue. Body-worn cameras we probably have to add 2 or 3 staff to. People don't get it. They think, well, buy the $5,000 camera, strap it on, and away you go. But there's a whole lot more to it, as I'd mentioned earlier. And it'll take more staff to run it. And people are the expensive part of anything. The most valuable and the most expensive piece of what we do. Our people budget of our police service is 86% of my complete budget are people. So that is always the issue when we go to council for more money. Is that we're usually trying to increase our staff. We've done it in some very unique ways. We hired a lawyer, and we hired a lawyer 2 years ago, and that has been a game changer in bringing professionalism to our service and dealing with freedom of privacy issues, dealing with the Police Act and discipline issues. Training for our people in search and seizure and impaired driving, and it just goes on and on. So, to me, that's where we need to be adding value right now, is through continuing to professionalize our police service. Because when you think about it, nurses are considered professionals because they have an organization where policing really never has been. So I really think we need to be working at professionalizing our organization by professional designations through education and training in a systematic way, and we're not doing that. So over my last couple of years, that's a piece that I'm going to be working really hard at, is to bring more of a professional accreditation to our members and to policing in general, and building the support they need through legal, through technology, all these different areas. So it's like I've got a great team of police officers right now and a great team supporting them. It's like 2 layers. And, I think we're just humming. I think we're doing a great job. But everything changes. It's like, and nobody likes change, but change just keeps happening whether we want to admit it or not. All we got to do is look in the mirror every day. Things change, and we have to be ready for it and adopt to it when it happens.
Well, professional development is becoming more and more important in every career path. And how does a police officer, once they get hired, they've obviously completed their basic training in a college or university, what opportunities are available to move ahead through our police service?
Perfect. So there's the $1 million question. So Don and I, we took courses on our own time, and we got our degrees while we raised families and while we worked on our policing career and did all the other things we did. And that's one way. But specific to our actual profession, you need to develop investigational skills. So there's different areas, right? Psychomotor skill training. It's all so important. And that's where I want to try to gather it all up and link it into some logical pattern that allows us to designate it as professional. One way that we can do that is the police sector competencies. The Canadian police sector competencies lay out the competencies for police officers from constable all the way to chief. And by using that as a basic guideline and attaching skills at those different levels, moving up and training and experience, that's, I think, the roadmap to professionalizing policing. We do it right now, but just in a very kind of uncoordinated manner. I know Don and I have probably been on, 100 courses between the two of us, but what did that ever add up to outside of our work through our post-secondary educational, commitments, which were basically done on our own? They don't add to anything. They're just a myriad of courses as you went through your career. So the key here now, the vision, is to link all them together into some professional designation. And we'd all be better off. And the community, I think, would have more confidence in us if they saw that designation through experience, through training, through education. It's linking that together. Then we become professionals. To call ourselves professionals right now, I think it's borderline. I think we do amazing work for this community. So I'd love to see us professionalize and designate ourselves through another body as professionals. We're working right now with the Lethbridge College to do that, and using the Canadian Police Sector Competencies, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're working towards it. It's a work in progress.
I think that's an interesting link, because the military had probably wrote the book on the competencies. As a recruit that comes in, he takes his basic course, and then before he can next thing he do, if he's going to be a tank driver, then he has to take a tank driver's course, and he gets a certification, he gets a ranking, and that's now one part of his qualifications. And every vehicle that he's allowed to operate, that's another course, another accreditation, another link. I think there's definitely a parallel there of where you want to go and where the military has traditionally been. If you want to be a lieutenant, you have to be qualified, and all of these courses have to be taken before you can be qualified to be promoted. Right. And you have to have all that ahead of time. So it's interesting that you're seeing that, because to me, that's one of the things, that having worn both hats at the same time, where I see the differences between it, and it's great to see that you're looking at that kind of direction.
Well, it's kind of funny is that the military have had this figured out for hundreds of years, and we're just starting to think about it. But it's the nature of our beast. We all get stuck in the moment sometimes, and sometimes you got to pull yourself away from the moment and look at the bigger picture, and that's tough sometimes to do that.
Well, I know the military has had course equivalencies, but the whole problem in Canada is the provincial designations of various qualifications. Yeah. And tying all those together is a big challenge.
Well, it's a big challenge, and sometimes I think people and organizations have to let some things go. Yeah. And work and say, you know what? Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, Lethbridge College is doing that right now with us. They're saying, let's make this work. Mm-hmm. Let's, because they want to get into the competency-based kind of environment, and they're looking at us, going, okay, let's work together on this, and let's build a blueprint. So, but you need willing partners, kind of on the dance floor to even go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And once you start getting that momentum, and you get people that are interested in doing it, you actually start to see some movement and some change. But it's going to take a long time. Yeah. But it's something to work for sure.
You can get it started, you won't complete it.
Well, yeah. Well, nothing's ever complete, no. Is it? It's complete. It's always evolving and changing, and that's part of the game. You got to build other people's capacity around you to continue some of these projects moving forward, and that's another role of any leader to do that. And I think we've all experienced that, and we've all done it. So yeah. It's good.
That's tremendous. I really appreciate you taking some time to come and chat with us today, and I think that it's clear that the roles between us are very much linked together, and that there's a cooperative links in the community with the military, with Alberta's regiment, as the South Alberta Light Horse is, and that obviously the regiment wants to be seen as a positive partner in this community, and I'm seeing that there certainly is that sense with the police service, that there is definitely a cooperation collaboration of resources, whether it be cerebral or technological or actual equipment. So
Well, sometimes it's just a natural relationship, but you're bang on. And I got to tell you, as just a kid from Bath, Ontario, ending up here as a old gray-haired guy, it's been a fantastic experience, and I'm so thankful with the relationship with the regiment, and thankful to serve the citizens of this community. It's been an absolute honor.
Thanks, Andy, for allowing us to talk to you for a few minutes.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been interesting to reminisce and things you just don't think of at times.
Yeah.
So thank you.
This is Alberta's Regiment. Thanks for watching.